Hey, welcome back. This is a very long awaited return for the AI Digest podcast. I'm your host, Joaquin Milata, and in this episode, we're going to cover converting human expertise into machine readable intelligence. Now, that's a fancy title, but what I can promise you is that this is going to cover the basis of knowledge management that can be transferred onto agentic functionality, grounding things in truth, uh, having a better understanding of how to treat knowledge freshness and stability. We have a very special guest, Jason Kaufman. He's been in knowledge management for the last 30 years plus, and he's incredibly talented. He's been very entrepreneurial. He hasn't just been statically adopting things and implementing services. He's been developing his own platforms. So, Jason, tell us what else we can expect, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Yes, Joaquin mentioned I've been in knowledge management for 30 years, and over that time, it's evolved a lot. And of course, what's fantastic about that is there's so many best practices that we can now bring to the curation of knowledge and information that go into these systems, and that's really that sweet spot that I've started to fully embrace. And from that, we've developed our platform that Joaquin mentioned to help us as knowledge workers really capture and tune truth that will go into these systems, not just our internal systems of businesses, but externally out there on the web as well. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here on this kicking off a new kind of season for your podcast.
Appreciate you, Jason. Now, the only stupid questions are the questions that aren't asked. So, I'm going to
I
get started
agree.
with the most basic ones. And yeah, what is knowledge? Everybody uses it, but do we have
Right.
a strict definition for it?
Wow, that's a very broad one, right? What is knowledge? In my line of work in knowledge management over the years, it's really the capturing of information that is to be shared, and we try to put it where people need it, when they need it, and writing for the right audience, right? So that's the context in which I worked with knowledge. Um, Now we've got another system, not just to put knowledge in, right? But really, I think this is a new medium, right? That really converts that knowledge into new truths, hopefully, but also uncovers those opportunities for us to contextualize them for mass digestion by these LLM systems. But yeah, so knowledge is a very broad term, but it's when does information become something useful to somebody, right? I think it's kind of part of what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think you said the key word context, right? I mean, you have information, strings of letters, making sentences, making things. The weather is 67 degrees. When? Oh, I
Yeah,
need that to figure out what I'm going to wear today. It's not until it's useful in the immediate situation that it becomes knowledge.
yeah,
Um, so, what is knowledge management to make it even narrower of a conversation?
sure. Yeah, it's getting the right information to the people who need it, where and when they need it. That is the holy grail of knowledge management. And over the decades, it's the goal has always been, especially in businesses, to obtain a single source of truth. The fact is, businesses tend to have multiple single sources of truth, right? So they've got these silos of information and data and knowledge from various systems. And now they are all struggling to really get that single body of information that these systems can now use, so it could be interpreted the way it was intended, right? And so, yeah, this is bringing knowledge management best practices, workflows, crowdsourcing truth, kind of like Wikipedia style, right, within businesses, help keep it fresh, right? Because something that was factual a month ago may not be factual today. So that needs to be maintained. And so a lot of those practices and processes are things that we've employed in knowledge management for many years. But now we're kind of coming to a head where we've got to get it right. As you and I were talking a bit ago, one piece of knowledge or information that is taken out of context can have a snowball effect. Because if we're using AI to write new content and it was informed by something or taken out of context that was factually incorrect, there is a snowball effect. So that new information will play off of the old and so on. So that's something that we've got to be very diligent about. I always say, take what comes out of AI as something that just kind of gets you to the 10-yard line. We as humans have to verify, vet it, and take the rest of the way. Hopefully, before it's put out, to the AI systems for digestion, but also before it's put out to the various audiences that we support, our customers, clients, readers, all of those things. So yeah, we really need to hone the skill of, trust but verify. And I think that's becoming more and more of our job as knowledge workers as we leverage AI to generate content. Sure, trust it to some degree, but absolutely verify it.
We started out the pre-production before going live with a conversation jokingly about innovation in the last 100 years, but also during the time of the cavemen and people that were just scribbling on a cave. Here's where the buffalo are. Here's where the mammoths are. Here's where the poisonous berries are. Do not eat. Very simplistic. A group shared the same reality, the same experiences, the same symbols. Incredibly simple. But then
Right.
at some point, we started mass printing things with the Gutenberg press, and all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, anybody could be printing their own Bible or version of the truth or version of reality. And now, don't get me started on the spreadsheets, because spreadsheet hell is a very real thing.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. No, it's definitely interesting. That the concept I just mentioned, right? Getting the right information to the right people where and when they need it was as true now as it was back then. They're writing on cave walls, don't eat these berries, right? Sure, you have to know to look there, right? Hopefully that's where they need it. But hopefully, absolutely, they get that message, before they need it, right? When they need it, not after. you know oh, those berries, oh no.
um, yeah, I mean, these are the concerns of computerizing that functionality, right? Like, you have to figure out how to create guardrails in these solutions. You're not just doing this for accelerating cave painting on MS Paint. You're doing it for things that have real weight and consequence. It's not just your financial spreadsheets. I mean, the IRS is not going to laugh with you that you fill out the wrong numbers on your tax
True.
return. They're going to get really, really angry, and you're going to get some big fines.
But it's
Or
okay if ChatGPT did the calculation for you, right? Then you're covered.
no, absolutely not.
Oh, well, I was going to play that card with the IRS, but no.
Oh well, is the IRS using ChatGPT or chatbots for misinformation?
No. I'm using it for my taxes.
Okay. Well, no wonder you saved so much money this year, huh?
All right. What it said.
So what's with this fixation on always finding a new way to manage knowledge? Like, you've noticed transitions and periods of time.
Mhm.
You mentioned making carbon copies of things, and then you moved on to I don't know. Can you talk a little bit about these knowledge management transitions that you found?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think as humans, I think it's human nature for us to A, want to communicate, right? Um, but B, do things easier. And I think we've, over the years, tried to make things as easy as possible. And that's why we adopt new technology so quickly, right? If I could use it to help you with my taxes and have a high degree of confidence that it was right, I would, because nobody likes doing taxes, right? So it's in our nature to want to communicate information, um, and be recognized, I think, for it. I mean, just speaking for myself, like the way I got into knowledge management was out of a passion for writing. You know, loved seeing my name in print. Loved knowing that something I wrote, people may find interesting or learn from. Seeing the byline on there, and there's I feel like maybe fundamentally what it maybe comes down to is we all want to leave something behind that's timeless. You know what I mean? The cave paintings, those are still there thousands of years later, right? I think that we as humans want to be remembered, and we want to put things out there that will be seen and maybe influence the future. I think what's fantastic about AI is it's opened up so many more creative avenues for people. Individuals that didn't know how to code before or had ideas for art, didn't really have the skill to put it together, now have a new way of working with this tool to generate really cool and exciting things. And it could, absolutely be looked at as a tool. But there are sort of the curmudgeons out there, right? They're like, oh, we're all going to forget how to write, and I'm sure it was the same argument when the Gutenberg press came out and when the calculator came out. We're going to forget math. No, it was an enabler, so we could do higher math. These are stepping stones. And, where we are today is going to look archaic in another 50 years, to those who are using it later. Hopefully we'll be in a place where, we did have those guardrails that you mentioned, or do have those guardrails in place, so we can trust the output, from this medium. I think trust is going to be a big factor, and that's why I think, coming back to the topic, the curation of truth and keeping humans in the loop. I'm really a big fan of the concept, not just of keeping humans in the loop, but having humans become the loop, enabled by AI, right? So have that be a facilitator of human communication and creativity, rather than us just playing some part in it, as some input. I think the way we engage with it absolutely is going to change over time, and this is something that is really a new era. I mean, but fundamentally, it's playing with words. It's tokens, right? It doesn't have a mind of its own. But what's great about that is you can scramble these words in so many different ways now to come up with new patterns, new thoughts, new concepts, new ideas. And I was just talking to a group earlier today, about leveraging it as a co-pilot, sure, but it's fantastic for brainstorming, just bouncing ideas. It may give you 10 horrible ideas and then one that sets you off in a new direction that you're playing off of, and you play off of that and play off of that, and finally you arrive at that grain, that the thing that can now become the impetus of a fantastic new idea, or a fantastic new way to position your company or talk about your product. That's what I find fascinating about it from day one, my experience with it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. You stimulated a new thought of, the concern of the caveman was survival, period. I want my children and grandchildren to know where to get the food and not to eat the berries, because Bill the caveman ate the berries and died.
Right.
But now, as
Or Bill.
or Bill,
he
yeah.
didn't get the message.
um, as society developed and our priorities shifted, then the freshness of information became more perishable. More, what would be the attribute? It became more timely. Um, I
Yeah,
mean, to,
crush.
to have
Yeah.
to have a flyer up on the wall that says "Party Saturday, show up." It's a much smaller time scale of making a decision versus every winter. the buffalo come. You know, that's
Yeah,
like that's where we're at today in modern society.
absolutely. Because truth is iterative, right? Because our context is shifting, at all times. Again, something that was true a year ago may not actually be true given our new context. And I don't know that they've ever found cave paintings where someone has actually X'd out the old one and drew something new, right? But the fact is, those to use our analogy, the buffalo herd may have been somewhere else. They may have shifted to greener pastures. The berries now grow in a different portion of the woods, right? So it's definitely iterative, and as you mentioned, our context is shifting so quickly now. The urgency and immediacy of maintaining truth given that context change has become more and more imperative. Again, what we're writing today is going to train the models tomorrow. So uh, getting it right the first time is or making it true given our current context, I should say, right, is all the more important before it's disseminated.
So now we're not writing things on a wall with charcoal. Now we're writing things by typing our fingers on keyboards, and that mechanical movement is transferring symbols in some digital space. Ooh,
Right,
and we're all able to get the same copy nearly instantaneously through social platforms. So,
right,
how do you encode? How do you encode knowledge? The
mhm,
the bodiless, abstract, conceptual thing in our brain, in that wet pink thing, into a format that computers can then compute,
right.
interpret, and then make useful for propagating into other patterns. Like you said,
Yeah,
we're training the LLMs with what we think and what we do. So how do we do that more
right.
deliberately?
Well, I mean, the model of 3 years ago, um, of putting out a singular PDF and disseminating that. You disseminated that information in context, right? People would have to read through and find something, but they have the whole context there to really understand that point. What's shifted now is that is being digitized, right? And it's being chunked and tokenized. And yes, taken out of context now often. So how we write for that is differently. And I talk to technical writers and documentation people all the time as an audience and present at those conferences about the best practices for chunking information and maintaining the context that's required in order to fully understand the point, the truth. A big part of that is knowledge graphing, right? Really maintaining and collecting metadata around where that information came from, what are the dates through which it's actually current, who did it, where's the source, right? I think it's going to become more and more important for us, and it already is, but to understand exactly where the sources of this information came from. You know, in business, and I was just speaking with somebody at the largest software company in the world 2 weeks ago, and they've got hundreds of SharePoint sites that contain thousands of documents each. And any one of those documents may have three versions, right? Um, and they're pointing oftentimes, their LLMs and their co-pilots and agents at these bodies of information that were most likely not intended or written for an AI audience. They were written with a specific purpose. Maybe it was training, maybe it was customer support, maybe it was sales or marketing. Maybe the same information with different contexts that AI is trying to interpret. Um, and it's almost like asking, and I use this analogy and it's horrible, I think, but you don't throw an encyclopedia at a child and say, learn it. Right? Although my grandma, I think, tried. But I think it's an iterative process. It's a continuous optimization loop of that information so it doesn't go stale. There's a learning curve there for these AI systems. It's a very natural curve that can happen if the system that's provided there enables that, right? So taking that information that may reside across these various silos and pulling it up in such a way that helps surface the opportunities for updating the context or updating the fact, I think is that's the approach that we really employ, right? Knowing where these chunks of information came from, so that those who manage that information in those locations can keep it current. A couple of weeks ago, I was presenting at a conference, and I started to really realize that we now have the ability to leverage hallucinations as a superpower, right? Nobody likes the word hallucination when it comes to these AI systems, right? But if you're using it in such a way that the people who are domain experts or subject matter experts in that area, if that information is surfaced in the right context to that person, they can start to identify those hallucinations and actually do something about it before it goes out to a target AI system or before it's ingested into a co-pilot. So what I'm a big advocate for, and this is what we've built, is this middle layer, this lightweight, chunked middle layer that helps these subject matter experts maintain that content before it's provided to the co-pilot, before it's provided to the agents that are going to digest it. So yeah, it's definitely an iterative process, and our context is constantly changing, and our approach to managing knowledge has to change with it. The good news is these systems now help us overcome a lot of the challenges we've seen in knowledge management over the years, right? Identifying factual inaccuracies is something that has been very difficult before. It's been a challenge since, day one, right? I'd say. But now we have that ability to view information through a new lens and start to recognize opportunities to maintain it and just improve it.
There's a couple things that are coming out organically from this conversation that I think deserve a little bit more grounding. Uh, in the same fashion of knowledge management, we want to share the context with the audience, and context is one of those ideas. I mean, in the example of a cave person drawing and reading cave paintings, you have a person, which is an organic agent, right? And a thing, an actor, the thing that receives the information and takes an action from that information, and then the information being the drawing, communicating via symbols, a lived
Right.
experience, right? So you're saying, and yes, we've seen this in the last couple of years, that the way that LLMs are going is that they're taking and shredding, as if you're putting it in a paper shredder, sentences and words, just slices
Right.
of words and sentences, and then they're giving them weight or encoding them with some sort of signature so that they can
Right.
be computed in a probabilistic matrix, right?
Right.
Doggy showed up 50 times in this book. Doggy
Hmm.
must be very important. Cat, not so much. Uh,
Right.
Bone, so so. But the relationship between these three things
Hmm.
shows what is happening inside
Right.
of the corpus, right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's all about statistical probability, right? In this corpus of information that was digested, that was shredded, right? The context in which it came helped train those models on how they were put together originally, so that it can start to understand, oh, in this new context, our prompts, right, that we input there, what is the most likely next word to follow this word, to follow this word? And it paints the picture real time. Well, with image creation, you can watch that happen, right? Um, and with words, in an image, it's a lot easier to see, oh, well, that person's got, 6 fingers on that hand, right? In words, it's a lot harder to detect because it's presented in such a way that it sounds so good and solid. It's like an argument and debate, right? the one who really articulates it best kind of wins, right? And these systems are great at putting information out there that looks entirely factual, but it was statistically driven, right? The probabilities of this word to this word to this word, you know, and all the more important, right, to have that initial context for it to digest, or new context, which is kind of ragged back in to inform its results. And that's probably another term we can talk some about. But all the more important for it to have that context to generate something that's more relevant, factual, timely. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought about putting it through the paper shredder, right? But what it should not lose in that process is the original context that it came from.
That's what you were saying with the grounding it in truth via the subject matter expertise of somebody who could discern with judgment and experience. This doesn't sound right. That doesn't look right. The mammoth has a leg on its head. We
Right.
don't see that. You know, they don't have 6 feet. That's really weird, and we're gonna stay away from those. But
Mhm.
is this what you're doing through your platform? Is this what you're trying to incorporate
Yeah.
into um, a verification layer that's programmatically
Yes.
kind of sifting through? Like it's useful to take the blended version of the text and then rearrange the strips of text and then tape it back together and say, hey, here's the story about the dog, the cat, and the bone.
Right.
Uh, but it's great for a jumping up point that you said in the creative sense, but then it still needs
Mhm.
to be grounded in reality, right?
Right. Yeah. This is where, this knowledge management best practices kind of come into play, right? So there's flagging and fixing. If you kind of distill it down to those two things there. So if you're presented information that you believe could be factually incorrect, you may have the ability to fix it yourself, right? To actually go into the source documentation and do it, or flag it to kick off a workflow to somebody else who has that access that can then go and fix it. But what we've built is something that helps surface information in such a way that makes it easy to identify where it came from and maybe who owns that and should fix it as well, to kick off that workflow kind of real time. I'm a big advocate for, within small teams or departments or small businesses, to give everyone the same level of access to find, not just find, but fix it directly, contribute to that knowledge directly. I think over time, what we're going to start to see, and I think we're already seeing, is this kind of collapsing of the middle, and flattening of organizational structure. Right? I think the organization of the future has very specific individuals that are domain experts and own information in each of those areas. And they're writing for and fixing information for the benefit of these AI systems. Um, that's the productivity promise of AI, right? Also, the fear that a lot of us have is that we'll be obsoleted or something, right? But that's a whole other discussion, I think. But um, allowing individuals in your organization to participate in that process, and giving them that route to take for their careers, right? I think is going to be important. I heard one person say, it's the revenge of the liberal artists, right? Generalists, those who understand certain domains or disciplines really, really deeply, will be prized, within these organizations and companies of the future, to be able to uh, tell fact from fiction and give context and write for this audience. And I say this audience as writing for AI as a new audience. There's certain styles, certain information, certain templates, formats, all those things that make it easier for these systems. Once you shred the paper, easier for it to interpret it and present it later.
I, we're in the midpoint of this conversation, but I feel like I can walk away with this sense of like this conversation has yielded this golden nugget of verifiable knowledge. I didn't know why you use those two words together,
Mm,
but now that we're talking about shredding papers, stitching them back together and saying, well, this sentence makes sense, this sentence doesn't, this picture makes sense, this picture doesn't, and here's how we can rectify it so that it's fresh. Um, that's Machines are just so much faster at doing these brute tasks than
yeah,
we are. We just have to accept that as a fact. I personally am a grumpy old man when it comes to writing and fabricating things. I do everything manually, but I recognize that there's a lot of speed and advantage of leverage of time of intent that can come with using these tools. But
right.
if you could shred a whole library simultaneously like that, and then you had 50 librarians or 50 subject matter experts to sort through the snippets of paper, you could come up with a really valuable knowledge base that is up to date. Because that is a problem with like incorporating all
Yeah,
these different corpuses and text. They need to be verified for timeliness,
right.
facts, and relevance in the context of where we are in the world today, right?
Yeah, you probably just scared a ton of librarians out there, by the way.
Well, no,
But
that I don't think it goes away. I think it's an
no, no,
augmentation,
no.
right?
Right. No, but I think you're absolutely right. I think that, we now, well, okay, I'll just kind of back up. So in knowledge management and documentation and technical writing over the years, a huge challenge that we've had is engaging subject matter experts to validate and verify information, right? So as a technical writer, where I cut my teeth early in my career, it was a challenge to get on their calendar, right? Then you have hopefully 15 minutes, maybe half an hour with them to go through a process, policy, or procedure that you've written to kind of get their sign off, right? And I remember speaking to somebody at Disney years ago, and this stuck with me ever since, right? And it cut to the core of what it meant for me to be a writer. I sat down with him. He's like, "Look, I can take 30 minutes with you and explain this to you, or I could take 5 minutes and write it myself." And I said, "But the fact is, you don't have 5 minutes." Right? It was this paradox of he didn't have 15 minutes to speak with me, but he didn't have 5 minutes to write it either. Right? The beauty of where we are now is we can generate content really quickly. It's getting into that 10-yard line, right? So now I believe that subject matter experts, if presented the information in such a way, can now take the 30 seconds, the 1 minute, to go through and review it and validate it and verify it, rather than the 5 or 15 minutes or half an hour they would have spent with a writer or themselves writing it. So what I've tried to build is a system that makes it very easy for SMEs to contribute to the knowledge without disrupting their day jobs, right? They're an expert in that space because they work in it all day long, 40, 60 hours a week. But now, instead of taking an hour for them to verify something, they can read through it pretty quickly and say, yes, that's correct, right? And it's shortened that amount of time to verification. So yeah, human verification is a phrase I use a lot. I think, especially, as more and more content's being written and put on the web, it becomes more and more important for us to be able to distinguish between what was simply AI generated versus what somebody actually wrote and verified and put their stamp of
Signature
approval
material.
on it.
Yeah. Um.
Yeah.
No, there's this problem of there's this idiom, right? Many hands make light work. You see the
Right.
people that live in the what do you call them? The Amish, that they
Mm-hmm.
build the
Raising the
whole
barns.
they build a whole barn in a day, and then they all carry this massive structure within like 40 people just lifting a whole building by themselves.
Right.
But in this digital space, that doesn't need to be done all at once. It could be done over a period of time. And like you said,
Yeah.
the accessibility and facility of taking chunks of it that
Hmm.
makes it easy for them to take the time to curate a whole
Yeah,
body of work.
absolutely.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, it's I call it the crowdsourcing of truth, right? And I love that analogy of many hands, light work, right? It I mean, playing off of that, you hear keeping humans in the loop a lot, right? To me, that sounds very, I guess, lonely, right? It sounds like we are working within a system that is a black box, and we just have to kind of figure out how to be a part of it. What I believe the beauty of AI is we have this opportunity to make it collaborative in a very easy way where humans become the loop, right? With AI at the center, helping to facilitate that kind of work, right? So we can all lift the barn together, right? And build new structures that can evolve, as our context changes. Yeah, I think that to me is the mission of my company is to really, enable people to collaborate, to be able to generate new ideas and work from each other and leverage AI as a mechanism for that instead of AI being the goal, right? That's not the goal. I think collaboration and human creativity should be the goal.
When one of the things that I wanted to really lean on you for with your background, education, experience is what timeless principles from information science do you heavily rely on today? We've been, you can't put caves, stack them up in a row, and go through the Dewey Decimal System to get
Right.
the Mammoth Cave. Um,
Mhm.
but ever since the Ice Age went away and agriculture became a thing, and everybody said, "Hey, it'd be really cool if we cultivated land together."
Yeah.
And then they started developing complex civilization with specialized roles in society. That's where knowledge management began, right? With libraries and encoding
Sure.
trade. Um, what can we learn from that in this age of AI, LLMs,
Yeah.
agents, whatever you want to say?
Sure. I think keeping the human experience in mind, right, before kind of embarking on any kind of AI journey, whether it's building a co-pilot or building an agent for a certain purpose, like having the goal in mind. What is the user experience? What's the customer experience, right? And then working toward that instead of we have this technology now, use it to do something, right? Have the goal in mind, right? And I think there was a recent MIT study. 95% of AI efforts, fail to reach ROI within enterprises, right? And the the reason I believe, well, a big part of it's the data, right? The knowledge that we're talking about, but it's also not having a vision for what you want the human experience to be, right? And then, so you mentioned kind of some of the the best practices, that should be applied or could be applied from knowledge management. Anytime I kicked off any kind of knowledge management project within any company, there were guiding principles, right? Those principles that should not be compromised, that we work within as guardrails, that we bounce things off of and say, oh, does this align with that? If not, it's out. Otherwise, yeah, maybe we change the principles, right? But those were there to ensure that the work that we were doing, aligned with the output that we wanted to get. Otherwise, we're all kind of flying blind. We're chasing shiny objects. Oh, it could do this. Cool, let's make it do that. But what for? Right? What's the gain we're looking to get out of that? So having a very clear vision of what you want that experience to be, I think becomes more important now, that because it can do so many things. And I've experienced this as well, right? So even in building Xeon, the product that we've just recently launched, it can do so much, but trying to do everything for everyone means it's not going to do anything for anyone, right? And that's the paradox. So really focusing and, on a specific domain or a specific target or a specific idea and diving deep into that, hopefully there's a need there, right? And it's not just building it to build it, but focus. I think it really comes down to focus. Who's it for and what's the need that you're fulfilling? And that's been a long process for me as well, especially when every day I'll wake up and have a new idea, a new way I can use it, chasing those shiny objects. It's write it down, come back to it later, But yeah, it is such a creative outlet. I think it's in our nature as humans to want to explore, and the fact is this is an endless exploration at this point. So we have to have that compass rose, the goal in mind in order to stay focused.
So there's this I read some self-help books and I like jumping into psychology and things like that. Um One of the things that I've come across that has stuck with me for the last, I don't know, 8 years is this idea of frustration. You have an expectation and you have your limitations and you're here. The delta between your expectation and your reality is how frustrated you are. Now, people that talk about LLMs, people that sell LLM based solutions, they say the world is your oyster. You can conquer the land. You will have all the money in all the world. And the promise is very large.
Right.
But you, as somebody who's deals with the friction, deals with the difficulty, says, should we categorize something in this bucket or that bucket? How do you negotiate with these unrealistic demands? They're not even expectations, they're demands. Hey, we
Right.
were promised this. You got to get us this. How
Right.
do you negotiate that with the information science that says, let's hold up. What do we want to architect? What kind of blueprint do we want to make?
Right.
Who's going to be
Exactly.
involved? And what building material are we going to use?
Exactly. And that's the focus, right? It can become very overwhelming, all of the possibilities, right? No, none of us are going to stay in front of everything AI can do in music, in art, in writing, right? Video production. We're not going to stay. I equate it to trying to, during the .com boom, right? Trying to stay in front of everything that's out there and all the information that's available and all the possibilities, right? That's where Google was born, right? That ability to find and search and find specific information that's tailored to your need, or uncover those websites or tools that are available out there, and Craigslist and some of the other lists and things, right? But I think it comes down to focus. And, yes, I think a lot of systems will kind of promise the world, right? But I'm suggesting focus on one region and go deep. Have a plan and execute that plan and stay focused on that plan. And if, I was with a bunch of entrepreneurs earlier today, and everybody's got ideas on how to use AI, right? There's some great ideas, but I see them all as use cases. These are use cases that do one point thing, but it does it hopefully really well, and hopefully addresses an actual need that's out there. I was at another event last week. One of the guys that created Siri was talking about how important it is to be pragmatic about it, and to find actual pain points that it's solving, not just, in a business setting, but for yourself, right? Maybe you've had some frustration in writing your novel or coming up with new ideas to incorporate into your concept. There was an individual that was kind of a curmudgeon early on, like after ChatGPT launched. He's like, I asked it a question and it gave me the wrong answer. And I said, that's not the point. The point is it can help you get closer to finding the right answer, right? It's the journey, not the destination. And and he started to kind of understand its value as a sounding board for brainstorming and ideation. And said, and this is where it clicked for him. He said, I've been thinking about writing the second edition of my book. I could use this to help me come up with some new ideas. And I was like, there you go, right? It's all about new ideas to kind of limit some of that frustration or things that we wouldn't have necessarily had time or wherewithal to explore. We're now starting to have that time and use this as a resource for ideation and brainstorming.
I think you bring up a really good point that gets lost in that raving craze, the hype. It's fit for use. You know, you're gonna get people that critique it for precision and, hey, why did it tell me to um, claim zero dependencies on my IRS tax return? I have two hamsters, a child, and a adopted cat. I need to get some money back. Um, it's more, like we said, it's shredded words that aren't verified. There's a value to that in saying what is a likely outcome to come from this probabilistic machine, but
Right.
it's not something that you can bet the farm on or run your taxes on or get legal or
Right.
health advice from. But it has its uses in creative modalities, right? So what about through the use cases that are non-trivial from your clients? What do people come with you? Uh, what kind of journey do people come with you on? They
Right.
tell you, hey, we want to adopt AI agents. They
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, we want to be able to chat with our database. What do they say to you? And then how do you lead them to water?
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Yeah. So they're coming to me with some real business challenges that they've had for a long time, right? A lot of these things that have caused kind of bloat and discomfort and frustration, we can now start to solve. One of which is, the fact that they've got lots of legacy information that before this AI capability um, was lost, right? Or lost in the shuffle or outdated. And in knowledge management, I used to call it the layering effect, right? Rather than going and revising a whole body of information before you put it into a new system, the tendency is to just create new on top of old, and that older stuff starts to settle at the bottom. It's like a mud puddle, right? And then you step in it, which is what we've done with AI, and it muddies the water, right? It brings all that old stuff back up to the surface. So that's been both a challenge over the years, but now an opportunity to be able to leverage AI to start to bring some clarity back to it and pull out those nuggets of truth to feed back into the AI so you can get some more relevant factual outputs. The challenges that I'm hearing is we pointed AI at our data, right? We pointed at file folders. We give our employees access to be able to point to our SharePoints and pull that information in, but it's muddied information to begin with, right? It's all, it's just now being stirred up, um, and in doing that, there's this gap of trust, that's evolved where this individual I spoke to a couple of weeks ago that I mentioned, they've got 60,000 sales agents around the world, sales reps across hundreds of products. And they want them to use and have launched AI co-pilots to them and said, use these to help you make sales, right? They're not adopting them. And part of it is kind of a learning gap. Like it's a black box. They don't know how to use it, what to do, right? So that's kind of the prompt engineering component of it. But the other part is, once they get something they can't trust, they don't want to come back, right? They don't want to give the wrong information during a sales call, make a promise they shouldn't have, misset expectations. So there's this trust gap, and that's what I'm trying to fix. Leveraging AI to help maintain truths so that it can actually build trust with those who are asking to use it. It's a trust thing. And then on the black box effect, right? People don't need to be prompt engineers. They shouldn't have to. When AI can write great prompts for you, right? So that's something that we've worked really hard at, is give it a simple task, and given the context that's available there and prompt templates that are available, create a draft prompt that this person can just tweak and adjust, and reuse and share. So it's not just collecting knowledge or truths, it's also collecting the how to use AI. What prompts in our context within our business or team or otherwise are things that we can reuse to get valuable product out. So there's these two components of how can we use AI and surface that out of the black box to people where and when they need it, and what information can I now use to send to the AI together and say, this is what I want, right? That's prompt engineering, right? But it's taking it down to the lowest common denominator. These 60,000 sales agents around the world shouldn't have to learn prompt engineering. They just want truth. They want fact. They want to trust it. They want the information where and when they need it. So enabling that is a very powerful use of AI.
We're open for questions. We had a comment from Tiago that says, "Yep, totally agree with Jason about human in the loop." If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and if we don't get to them in this time, we'll, be sure to follow up with you afterwards. But I just want to dissect that delta of you shred a corpus of things, SharePoints with PowerPoints, Excels, Google Word documents in whatever format. The knowledge may be stale from 30 years ago. It could have been produced by an intern that was misinformed, and
Right.
all that noise and value is put in the same bucket. So it's
Right.
unverified liquids. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you're saying through your platform and what you've been working on, you allow for filtering through this blended mess, this blended concoction, so that you have verifiable chunks and
Yeah.
create a usable interface so people can understand and rely on things because they've already been verified by other people.
Yes. Yeah, that's the goal. And I think that's the gap that we've really uncovered through using AI. It's the gap and it's the opportunity, right? How to engage those who have information in such a way that they can share that information quickly and efficiently in the workflow, right? The second part is, if I come across something that does not look quite right, have that ability to quickly fact check it. And if I find that gap, either fix it, fill the gap, or send it to somebody else quickly who can. That's the crowdsourcing of truth. And that's the model that I put in place there. Yeah, I think the assumption that I've seen made in knowledge management throughout my career is, because somebody wrote it at one point, it has value. Right? If somebody took the time to write this 10-page document, it must be good. It must be correct. There's an assumption that if it once had value, it still does. And that's a false assumption, because our context has changed. The information may not apply anymore. Maybe for a product we no longer sell or support, or we've sunsetted, or it uses messaging or branding that we no longer use or have moved away from. So I am very much a proponent of having a clean slate with AI. I don't want it to remember my conversation I had 10 minutes ago. I just don't. I don't want it pointing to a file folder that's got multiple documents that I need to maintain, right? I like a clean slate so I can pull in the context that I need and the prompts that I want to use on the fly. And to me, that's not just being in the loop, that's orchestrating, right? That's building the experience and pulling in and getting new information out more effectively. I was speaking with somebody earlier today at this event, and he was like, he had a hard time just remembering things. And I talked to him about using AI as an extension of your own synapses in your brain. You shouldn't have to remember where you put that note, where you put that document, which prompt you used, and having to dig through old threads and try to find, oh yeah, here's that nugget of information I need. Yes, that's helpful, but a system where you can just ask it, what prompts can help me with this? What assistants do I have that can help me with this? Could you help me create an assistant to help me with this? What do we know about? And that's the cue for it to go and, really scan the knowledge and truths and information to pull something back in on the fly, rather than point it at a certain file folder and then have it digest that in its entirety. So yeah, I'm a proponent of a lightweight knowledge management system that puts people in the driver's seat rather than being a passenger or a co-pilot.
And when you create this clean vessel that has verifiable truth stamped with human approval, then you can employ that with agents that have the clean instructions and things that they can grab onto and make decisions that are fresh and within the context of what they should be doing. Right.
Right.
That's kind of the
Yes.
angle for enabling
It,
AIs, agents, and more elaborate orchestrations.
yeah, it's embedding us in such a way that we have more control, right? Everybody, of course, talks about agentic AI, right? Give it a task, it goes and works on it, gives an output.
It's not that easy, but try hiring a new employee and having them learn the systems and the
It's
protocols, and it's the same thing.
exactly, and it's easy. It's easy for these agentic workflows to go sideways, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've built workflows in Zapier and the like, right? If it messes up at any point, it goes you get an entirely different output, right? And so, giving us the ability to orchestrate that, right, and fine tune that, and ensure that it's got the correct information that's real time, helps keep it on track. We're the ones orchestrating that. We're the ones driving that and saying, here's what I want. Here's the path I want you to take. And it's a lot less rigid than just, throwing trust over to it, hoping it gives me an output I want. Yeah, it's definitely an iterative process where, we're not just in the loop, but we're driving it,
So, from the example of cave paintings to AI agents, what kind of advice do you want to give to the audience? What experience can you impart as we sign off?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest takeaway is in anything that we're developing with AI, and I imagine a lot of folks, watching this are have ideas on how to leverage AI and how to make a product and how to put it out there, or even just how to use it. Keep keep the end in mind. What is the experience that you're trying to build, and then how can we leverage technology to gain that experience? So that's a big part of it. The other part is there a real need there? Right? Are you ripping out an entire search function on your website in favor of an AI agent? The search might have been working perfectly well for that use case. Do people want it? Is there a demand there for that action? Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. The other takeaway I think is, we need to evolve into curators of truth. We need to, as knowledge workers and business owners, start curating our own facts and information that we want to use and reuse, but be the keepers of our own truth for our businesses and for ourselves. Leverage AI to go find those discrepancies online that may not be factual anymore, may not represent you, your brand, your company, in the optimal way for these AI systems.
I mean, we can't expect this machine to do everything for us, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Hopefully,
Not you're the librarians. No, no.
hopefully we never get there, but yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and catch you in the next one.
Thank you, Joaquin. Thank you so much, and good luck with this new phase of Swarm content here on your podcast.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you. Have a good day.